Good morning, everyone. I'm Isabel Casal Abreu. I'm the Executive Director of All Air. It's a pleasure to be here with you today again in our first event for 2023. The last time we had an event in São Tomé was the International Conference in late June. I'm sorry, there's some echo and it's making it very hard to interpret. We'll be focusing on energy efficiency. Energy efficiency and renewable energies are almost twins. One doesn't go without the other. And so, like I was saying, we'll be focusing on energy efficiency. But before that, we're just going to go through the hoops here. A few instructions for listeners and for everyone who may need interpretation. This webinar has simultaneous interpretation. You can just press the globe icon and then select the language you want to listen to.
I will now repeat this information in English. So everyone who is listening in English or who is not fluent in Portuguese, welcome again. Just to let you know that we have simultaneous interpretation, so you'll be able to listen to the English translation. You just have to click on the globe icon on the bottom menu and switch to English. We will have both presentations in Portuguese and in English. So for when the speaker is speaking in English, you can go back to the original audio so you can listen to the speakers in English.
Back to Portuguese, we'll have English speakers. At that time, you can switch your interpretation to Portuguese. If you understand both languages, just leave it on original and listen to whatever each speaker is speaking. We'll have a debate and Q&A, 2 moments for Q&A. During the debate, there will be small speeches, but everyone is invited to take part and ask questions or make comments. Please do that through our chat. Zoom sometimes has the Q&A option, but we won't be using that. If you have any question, just press the chat and then write down your question or your comment. Finally, I'd like to say that if you have any technical issues, if you can't join or if you can't hear, you can reach out to us by email and we'll make sure to reply as soon as possible. And without further ado, after this small introduction, I'd like to launch our webinar. I was telling that the topic was energy efficiency. We were hoping to have the minister here for the opening session to tell us a bit more about energy transition in São Tomé and Príncipe. This was launched quite a few years ago, but unfortunately, because of scheduling issues, he won't be here. But we are very honored to have an opening speech by José Baixo, DG for the Directorate General for Resources, Infrastructure, and Environment. You have the floor. Good morning, everyone. ladies and gentlemen, representatives of companies and states, representatives of UNIDO, representatives of African Development Bank, of the World Bank, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the PNUD, of the JEC, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of São Tomé and Príncipe and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Natural Resources and the Environment, I'd like to thank UNIDO for cooperating through the Renewable Energy Project, through the GF Fund. All of these are important tools to our country to help us in our energy transition. I'd also like to thank several institutions for being here from the energy sector, but not only. And I'd like to thank our development partners, members of the technical committee, who have created a project that is aligned with the needs of the government and the country. According to the SDGs, the government has developed and implemented policies geared towards meeting said goals. The energy sector is considered a key sector for the growth and the fostering of sustainable growth. And we're focusing on energy efficiency. The country's goal is to reach at least 50% of renewable energies by 2030. And we want to implement all the measures needed to reach the goal. And we want to change the energy mix in the production of electrical power. This target must be aligned with other energy efficiency tools. There are challenges connected to the lack of implementation of this project. But we're counting on everyone to help us reach our targets. We count on the support of our domestic and international partners who have ever been with us in this long road. Ladies and gentlemen, countries have been trying to fight climate change and have been trying to make better use of their original resources. We're also aware of how important this meeting is, and I'd like to wish you all a fruitful day. And I declare open this webinar. And I thank you all for being here. Thank you very much for your very kind words. Without further ado, I'd like to state that energy transition is the path São Tomé is on. And linked to energy transition, we have the GF UNIDO project, and we've been partners to that project. I have here Martin Lugmeyer representing UNIDO, who will now take the floor. Thank you very much. Dear Minister, dear directors, international partners, colleagues. I'd like to begin by thanking you, everyone, for being here at this webinar organized by the DG of Natural Resources and Energy, ALER, and UNIDO. This webinar is being put together under the scope of two projects financed by the GEF and the GCF. The target of these projects is to mitigate existing hurdles to investment in renewable energies and energy efficiency in São Tomé and Príncipe. I'd also like to thank the Minister, Mr. Adelino Cardoso, for his leadership and support. I'd also like to thank Mr. Gabriel Makengo and his team in the DG for the very strong cooperation we've had over the past few years. Again, I'd like to thank Alair for their cooperation, the long-running cooperation when it comes to issues of sustainable energy in Portuguese-speaking countries. When we look at the current prices of oil, we should be aware that in this webinar, we're not just discussing energy as a whole. We're talking about how to turn São Tomé and Príncipe, a small island, a resilient economy and competitive economy that has bounced back from COVID very well and is adjusting to climate change. When we look at the running debt in diesel costs, it becomes clear that we need to rapidly switch to renewable energies and to have more energy efficiency. In this context, I'm very happy to see that São Tomé and Príncipe, with our help, as well as other international partners, has a clear plan of how to reach this target. And I'd like to allude to the new national action plans for renewable energy and energy efficiency. These plans lay out a scope for the energy sector between 2030 and 2050. In the electrical sector, the plan is to have renewable energies of up to 70% in the installed capacity and a reduction in the energy consumption of 13% by 2050. This will save approximately 1 million tons of diesel by 2050. This means about $1 billion saved, considering the current projections of diesel prices. Currently, the spending in diesel import goes up to 8% of the GDP of São Tomé. This must change. By implementing these new measures, this percentage will be significantly reduced. This is a lot of money to be spent in, and it can be spent in education, health, more productively, and climate adjustment. Carrying out these plans will require huge investments in infrastructure and human resources over the next few years. This includes a wide scope of technologies and areas like small hydropower plants, solar power plants, biomass, and ocean energy plants. The National Action Plan showed huge potential for improvement in terms of energy efficiency. The island's electrical system is marked by high losses, approximately 35%. In the past, energy efficiency wasn't given enough attention, and people would just think about reforming the tariffs, expanding the grid, etc. Improving energy efficiency can reduce peak hours and family spending, and also company spending. It also can cut down on the need to invest in new generation capacity and contribute towards a change to renewable energies. Developing and applying energy efficiency patterns has been identified as a priority of the action plan. Over the past few months, UNIDO has supported the government in drafting technical reports establishing minimum standards for energy performance for lighting, refrigerators, and air conditioning. In order to respect this legislation, they drafted an implementation chart, and over the next few weeks, the legal groundwork will be finished. And at this point, I'd like to thank consultants, AERE and Falcon, as they have supported us throughout all of this, and they will present some documents to us. Finally, I'd like to point out the leadership of São Tomé and Príncipe in the field of energy efficiency. The minimum standards developed are a very interesting model that can be replicated in the African community, in the community for the Central African states. We are currently launching our new center in Luanda, Angola, focusing on the global network of sustainable energy centers, GNSCC. Again, I'd like to thank you for being present at this webinar. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank UNIDO for supporting Portuguese-speaking countries in general and São Tomé in particular, in all issues pertaining to energy efficiency. And now to speak on behalf of São Tomé, with the dual role of Energy Director and Coordinator of UNIDO Team Leader, I'd like to give the floor to Gabriel McKing. Good morning, everyone. Again, it's an honor to be here at an event such as this one. I'd like to thank Mr. Director General who launched this event. I'd also like to thank UNIDO, who is a partner that has been with us since early on, and we hope they'll be with us until the very end. Allow me to give you an idea of what we've been doing today when it comes to energy efficiency. There's more and more energy demand all over the world. All the world needs more power. This is one of the great challenges of today. All of this is linked to climate change, and we need to solve these issues, these problems. Several studies have been made, and they've contributed towards technology changes. And there's more and more programs geared towards energy efficiency. And this program is supposed to be an alternative to the growth in energy demand. Greenhouse gas emissions is a very visible indicator, but energy efficiency brings some challenges for sustainable growth. We need more energy security. There's greater pressure on domestic budgets. We need more reliable electrical grid. We need to improve on areas like education, health, etc. Despite all of this, energy efficiency is still underused in many places in the world. This is a challenge for us in São Tomé, and we're trying to break out of the paradigm we're in. And there's a lot of financial constraints. The markets, the financial markets and the energy markets must be linked to local markets. São Tomé is developing specific programs, including the one we're going to present to you now, in order to make the best of all the potential we have. We need new hardware, new lamps, generators, air conditioning equipment. We need everything to be more efficient. And we need to refine the legal framework in our country. What we have is not enough. We want to go beyond what we have. We need to renew our hardware. There's a lot of sectoral things we can do. And there are measures we know we'll be able to implement very shortly. We want to show the world what we're like. And we'd like to show the world what we're doing right now, as of now, on the field. Thank you so much. It's important to see how, it's good to see how important energy efficiency is to you. I'd like to remind you all that the best energy is the energy that is not used. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. We want to see how to reduce energy consumption and how to do it more and more efficiently. Like Gabriel said, it's important to have a legal framework in order to ensure that we have the best policies and practices for energy efficiency. To that effect, AERE has been working with the DG Energy and UNIDO to create minimum standards for energy performance. To that end, I'd like to invite Anne Rieu to the floor. She will make a presentation in English. So I'd like to invite all those of you who need to listen in Portuguese to change their languages.
Obrigado. Thank you, Anne. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen. I just wanted to share the screen. I think it's not the right one. This one should be okay.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, so thank you. So dear Mr. Teodotse Lima, DG of Ministry of Infrastructure, Natural Resources and Environment, dear Martin Lugmir, dear Mr. Gabriel Macango from UNIDO, dear Isabelle Abreu from ALER, and dear participants, I'm really pleased to present you the result of our work. It's 3 minimum energy performance standards for 3 appliances: lighting, air conditioner, and refrigerator. And it's part of the UNIDO project strategic program to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency investment in the electricity sector of São Tomé and Príncipe. We have done this work thanks to the work of the Greek company Telkom, with the Dr. Elias Sofonis, the Dr. Yorgos Tigas, and the Dr. Yanis Sofonis, and as international consultant, the Dr. Essel Benhagen, the Dr. Charles Diarra, and as national expert, Mr. Angel de Boa Esperanza and Mr. Elves Moro. And myself, I am Dr. Anna Rial. I'm working for more than now 30 years on energy efficiency, and a lot of work is dedicated to maps and label. And I would present you some maps and label proposed for São Tomé and Príncipe in collaboration with DGNRE at least, but not only. So when we are talking about energy, energy is an answer to needs we can have. It can be to get some light, it can be to have some food conservation and so on. So energy efficiency is how we can use the lowest energy consumption to have answer to these needs. So for the same service, how we can use the lowest energy consumption. We can say that it's a concept that defines the different means, the different techniques to lowest the consumption of energy useful for a service we need. And by lowering the energy consumption, we'll avoid to waste energy based on the most appropriate technology. For instance, if we go from an incandescent lamp to an LED lamp, we can save up to 60% of energy. So we are using more appropriate technology to get some light. As we are avoiding wasting of energy, we can have more energy for other service, and so it can be useful for the different final user of energy to get more energy, to have less electricity power cut, and also it reduces greenhouse gases emission, as it was already stressed. So in this question of energy efficiency, what are MEPS, minimum energy performance standards, and labels? You can see just here, you have MEPS. It's one we found in one shop in São Tomé. It's a visual support, so it will help the buyer to buy the most adapted appliances to their needs. Here it's for fridge, and you see the different arrow of the label, and this one was an A+. And these maps and labels, it's a well-proven and developed mechanism existing today. So the main objective of the project we have worked on was really to increase the national capacity of São Tomé and Príncipe to use more energy efficient appliances, and linked with question of quality standard. When we are increasing energy efficiency of an appliances, we are increasing also, we are increasing also the quality of the appliances, because we have best equipment inside, for instance, an air conditioner or a fridge and so on. We are having more quality for the global appliances. If we implement MEPS and labeling, and if we are successful in this implementation, and in general we will have a reduce of the electricity peak demand in the country, and so we will reduce the pressure on the electricity network, and we will reduce the time and the number of electricity power cut. We will also reduce the global electricity consumption. For instance, for refrigerator, we can estimate to 6.8 gigawatt hour of electricity saved thanks to MEPS and labeled refrigerator. It can be up to half of the consumption of the refrigerator scheduled for São Tomé. For the light, For the lighting sector, it can be between 40 to 60% of electricity saved. And it's the same quantity of money, dobra, that will be also reduced from the bills of the consumer. So the consumer, they will have a smaller part of their income for electricity bill. And also you see here you have different manual of labels and energy efficiency that have been translated or that have been written in Portuguese. So it's also a powerful tool because it's very visual. You can see the efficiency on the label. It's a powerful tool to inform the different consumer about what is energy performance, what is energy efficiency. And it's also an information not only for the final user, the consumer, but also for all the chain from the manufacturer until the shop and the retailers of the appliances. So what we can say from maps and label, you have here a label, an example of a label. You see here you have the manufacturer name, you have the type of the appliances, it's for light, you have the label, it's a class C, and you have also the consumption for 1000 hours, and you have a QR code because we have more and more information available on the web. And when we have a threshold, a MAPS, it's a very simple mechanism because it's a threshold. You will see later that we have a threshold for Cabo Verde for light, and we are proposing the same for São Tomé and Príncipe. So thanks to this threshold, we can ban the most inefficient appliances, and especially for lighting the incandescent lamp. So this is an information with a very simple mechanism, a threshold. And after we have an information, we indicate to the buyer what are the level of efficiency of what they want to buy. So it's really different information that are given on one side on the buyer. It's an encouragement to choose the most efficient appliances, and we can discuss also the financing mechanism behind that, so to support them to buy more efficient appliances. And it's also an information on the other side for all the chain of production until the retailer, because who wants to buy something really bad or the worst appliances? Nobody. So it's really an encouraging mechanism to propose most efficient appliances to the market. So who can be involved in São Tomé and Príncipe in this mechanism of implementing maps and label in São Tomé and Príncipe? You have here like an implementation pathway. You have here the different partners that can be involved or that must be involved inside labels and maps mechanism. And you have like here the cycle of the project to implement a maps and a label. To implement maps and label, what we need is a legislation and regulation that will set up the value and the frame to implement these maps and label. It has to be done by law or decree or so on. Mainly, it will be discussion with government agency, ministry, and so on. Based on that, we can reinforce the different capacity of the different stakeholders. It can be with a standard authority that will have to check that is what is proposed in the shop is online with the legislation and the regulation, but it's also can be the capacity building of the different importers, distributors, retailers, so they know more about energy efficiency and especially maps and label. And this is going with awareness creation of the chain of the market, the stakeholder of the market, and also of the user, to inform the user, especially the buyer. We have also some action with specific to question of gender, and we are also looking to that. We have different inquiries in São Tomé and Príncipe to understand how the market is working on that. This legislation, this information, awareness creation, sometimes some training, This will conduct to a market transformation. The most inefficient appliances, the worst appliances, will be banned from the market, and we will have a market transformation. We can also have some innovative financing mechanism. It can be rebate, it can be subsidy, it can be thanks to tariff and so on, to support the final buyer or even the importers, distributors and retailers to import and buy the most efficient appliances. Of course, we will also need some control, so we will also involve the custom agency. And in general, when we are working on maps and label, we are also discussing the question of the waste of the old and no more working product appliances. So also the waste management company are very often involved inside the process. So we can have like a cycle with the decision to involve to implement maps and label in São Tomé and Príncipe. So first we will provide tools, instruments. It can be a regulation, for instance. Then we will inform. We will discuss with different stakeholders. We will validate the proposal. We will train the different stakeholders. So we will engage different partners. We will see how to allocate different resources. It can be international or national support. It can be through different mechanisms. And of course, we will have after some monitoring and verification of what is really done inside the shop in São Tomé and Príncipe. So for that, we have worked mainly with Mr. Gabriel Macango, but we have also worked with the technical committee for all the project and with different workshops with the different stakeholders. We have some inquiries. I have already explained you. We have some shop visit, and we have also different mission, both on São Tomé, and we have one specific mission in Príncipe to see if there is some specificity for Príncipe, for the island of Príncipe. So what are the main lessons we can say from the maps? Maps, today it's developed for more than 40 years. It's a very well developed tool for question of energy efficiency. And we already have a lot of technical information on maps and label. Especially the European Union maps and label have been very well studied, and a lot of information is available on the mechanism, on how the people react and so on. In São Tomé and Príncipe, most of the appliances are imported from Portugal, which means that they already are using the European Union maps and label. So they already have label and maps when they are entering from Portugal to São Tomé in Príncipe. For Africa, African Union has developed some threshold for maps and some recommendation for the different neighbor. And ECOWAS, the economic community of the West African state, have also set up some threshold for maps and for label. And for instance, Capo Verde, with also Portuguese-speaking country, has decided to follow the European Union standard. So Capo Verde has set a very, very high threshold on the different appliances and put also some incentive measure to implement these maps and label. The country of Benin has decided to follow the ECOWAS maps model. And there is also some work done in Nigeria. In Ghana, there are already maps from a long time ago with some laboratory and so on. So here you have an example of the label we have proposed for here Nigeria and here for Benin. Of course, there is change in the appliances. There is progress in the different technical solution. So the different energy classes and the threshold of the maps must be reviewed every few years according to the need of the country. So what we are proposing today, you will see there is 3 regulation proposed today, has to be reviewed in some years to be more adapted design for São Tomé and Príncipe. About regulation that have been developed and discussed during the workshop with the technical committee and so on, we have one first, which is prohibition of manufacturing, selling, or importing incandescent filament lamp. So there is really a ban of all the incandescent lamp. Also of the used refrigerator, no second-hand importation in the country, of the used refrigerator or freezer, of the used freezer, or the used air conditioner. This is one of the regulation. The two other regulation are really the one which are defining the MEPS and the label, one for household refrigerating appliances, and the other one for the non-ducted air conditioner regulation. So there is really a definition of what we call household refrigerating appliances, and also of what we call the non-ducted air conditioner, because there are so many models available on the market. There is a definition, of course, inside the regulation. Also a definition of the MEPS, of the value of the energy classes for the label, how to calculate it, how it looks, what is design of the label proposed, how it can be displayed, how it must be displayed on the appliances available in the shop, on catalog, on the web, which documentation must be available. Of course, I have already explained that as we are doing more progress on energy efficiency, we have a global improvement of the quality of the appliance. So we have also some indication on the label, on the noise level, for instance, for the refrigerator, of the size of different compartments of the refrigerator, and so on. I will show you one example, which is the one for Capo Verde. Here you have an example of what Capo Verde has decided for the lamp. You see here that there is a ban of all the D and E lamp in Capo Verde. Only the lamp from the class C until A 3+ are now available, and it is measured thanks to the energy efficiency ratio. It's for the non-directional lamp. So you can see that the lowest acceptable class is the class C. And after we are on the shop, there should be class C, B, and A also that are available inside the shop to be bought by the final user of the lamp. And it's the same with other specific value. It's not the energy efficiency ratio because it's different for air conditioner, for instance, is a SEER, seasonal energy efficiency ratio, that is defined by the regulation proposed to São Tomé and Príncipe. To implement this MEPS and label, how we can do that. So to support that, to do that, we have set up a framework, a monitoring, verification, and enforcement framework, MV&E framework. So this is really a guide for the implementation of the different MEPS and the labeling program for these 3 appliances. And it's also to be sure that what is done will be established with the right regulation. So it's also linked to the national compliance program. So on one side, we are working with importer, distributors, and retailers for the 3 appliances: lighting, refrigerator, air conditioner. So L here, LRAC. So it's really to certify what is imported and in the shop sale to the user are corresponding to what is asked to the regulation. And on the other side, there is a market surveillance and training, of course, and awareness creation, of course, and also some enforcement procedure for the regulators, for the custom agency, and for the standard agency that are also part of the stakeholders and part of the progress program if we want to implement MEPS and label. So there is different mechanism. And so this will allow to evaluate and maybe to adapt what is proposed in the monitoring, verification and enforcement framework, so it will be really fit to São Tomé and Príncipe. This has been developed with the different stakeholders, with the approval of the technical committee for these 3 appliances, thanks to different workshops working with the people and different meeting and interview with these people. So what will be the benefit of this compliance framework? First, of course, it will be that we'll be sure that the maps and the label are implemented the way they should be to achieve the target we have set up. But one other very important also consequences is that there will be a protection for the market from the appliances that are not accepted now in São Tomé and Príncipe, because they will fail to perform the declarations that are required. We will see in a specific register, we will see that later. This means, because the worst appliances are banned from the market, that the consumer will be sure of what he can buy, and that will be in line with his expectation and with the label he can see on the appliances. And also, it will be a fair market for the importers, the distributor and the retailers, because the ones who are working with the efficient appliances, they will be sure that there is the same market entry condition for all the shops, the importers, the distributors. And of course, at least it's a guarantee for, let's say, the official or governmental stakeholders. That is, and we have the list here, the MIR, the policymaker, the Government Energy Agency, DGRNE with the Energy Efficiency Department, AGER, the energy regulator, a certification body to be implemented in São Tomé and Príncipe, ANSE, CENAPIC, we will discuss later, which is really the standard authority, and the custom directorate. They all know they are all working in the same direction with the same objective, and that they can reach this objective of energy efficiency thanks to this mechanism that is set in place in São Tomé and Príncipe. So for the appliance certification, how can we manage it? I have already explained that most of the appliances are imported from Portugal, and in Portugal they already have the European Union label. So if these appliances have the European Union label, it means that it has already been tested and that it has already a documentation for certification which are coming from an international autonomous laboratory and accredited laboratory. So we already have a guarantee thanks to this importation. The suppliers of these appliances, of course, by the custom, by DGRNE, by ANSE, by CENAPIC, they can be asked to provide certification for their own appliances. And if needed, CENAPIC, we will see that later, can ask to neighboring country, it can be Cabo Verde, it can be also Ghana, to do some more tests to check the value that are declared on the label or on the maps for the country. So you can have some cooperation with neighboring laboratory if necessary. So for this question of evaluation of the conformity between what is displayed on the label, and you have some example of label available already in São Tomé. We propose that CENAPIC, which is the National Service of Intellectual Property and Quality, will play the leading role in the assessment of the conformity, because as I have already explained, it's really a question of quality of the appliances. So CENAPIC can check that the lighting appliances, refrigerator, the air conditioner have the right label as display on their different appliances and as stated by the regulation in São Tomé and Príncipe. This can be done, it has to be done in collaboration with DGRNE and also with a private sector association of the importers of the free appliances, the distributors and the retailers, that is ANR and APERAS. So we have also worked with these different associations during the different workshops. DGRNE is really a key stakeholder also. He has to support SENAPIC in the conformity assessment. And when ANSE, this certification body will be established, it can be transferred to ANSE for this role. The conformity assessment is a 3 steps mechanism. First, prior to import to São Tomé and Príncipe, there is a pre-testing of the free appliances that has to be done. And in general, it's done because it's already tested for other countries. Then there is a verification of the maps and label of the appliances. Then there is a registration of the appliances in a specific basis. Of course, the verification and all the tests that can be done, it's done on a random basis. It's not all the appliances that must be tested. It's really a random basis for doing this verification. So for doing this pre-testing before the importation to São Tomé, it's written that before decided to import some appliances in São Tomé, they should be tested in their country of origin, and we should have a test certification. And there should be also on the appliances labels that will be fixed and that will be online with what is defined in the free regulation of São Tomé. So it should not be a second-hand appliances, and it should have the label as explained and required in the regulation. Before entering into São Tomé, the test should have been done by an accredited third-party laboratory, and that will reduce the non-compliance with the regulation, and that will support to limit the fraud of the appliances entering to São Tomé. When it's on the market, there can be some check in the shop of what is proposed to the buyer on sale and how the products are labeled. It can be just a visual check. It can be someone from SENAPIC with a custom directorate that can do this work. And how to be sure that these different points before entering the market, on the market, are really done, respected by the importers. Before entering the appliances into São Tomé, the importers have to declare the appliance energy performance and some other details that are on the label to official of SENAPIC and custom, and it can be at the São Tomé port of entry that can be done. And I will explain how this is done. So the verification of the maps and the label, SENAPIC, again, on a random basis, it will not be done for all the appliances, of course. SENAPIC can check the documentation, the labels, what is declared as maps and label, and this can be done by analysis of the documentation. It's a test certification, it's a technical documentation, it can be research on internet. If SENAPIC with DGRNE and ANSE later as a doubt on the conformity of the appliance, if SENAPIC thinks there is a fraud on some appliances entering São Tomé and Príncipe, it can ask control and testing in an accredited laboratory. It can be asked in Portugal, it can be asked in Ghana, in Capo Verde, and so on. Then SENAPIC will take some appliances, will send to the laboratory to have the test done, and so it will see if there is a discrepancy between what is declared on the label and what is the value measured in the laboratory. So, and you can see if there is some non-compliances, and in that case, in the regulation, it is scheduled some measure again against the importers if there is a non-compliance with the regulation. So the following checklist, it's written there, can be applied. It can be is the energy label present on the appliances. It is found in the correct place. It is linked to the energy label, the right one. Is the label content correct? Are the colors of the label correct? Is the size of the label correct? It's everything which is already defined by the regulation. And if there is a fails on compliance, it's the importers and the distributors that has to cover the cost of the verification test. So to take some appliances, to send to the laboratory, to do the test and so on, it has to be covered by the importers and the distributor. There can be also some other penalties it defined in the regulation. And if there is compliance with the regulation, it's to Senapic to cover the cost of the appliances. We are also proposing a product registration system. It's part of the surveillance of the market, of course. So DG R&E will develop some weight-based product registration system, and it will be linked to the management information system that has to be shared with MAE, which is São Tomé and Príncipe water and electricity company. So we ask to importers and distributor of light, refrigerator, air conditioner to register their enterprise and their product they want to import in São Tomé, in linked with DG R&E, later with NC. So they have to enter information of their own company inside the product registration system, the PRS, and after they will enter the information of the different appliances they plan to import to São Tomé. DG R&E, later NC, can have also on a random basis a check of the declaration and the supporting document that can be on the registration system. If everything is okay, today we can have automatic consistency checks of what is written, and if everything is okay, and if the information are the one, the right one, the one DG R&E was weighted, it can grant permission for the appliances to enter São Tomé and Príncipe. Or if he thinks it's not possible, he can say, okay, I will not allow these appliances to enter São Tomé and Príncipe until some point will be improved. And we also propose some information to be indicated in this registration system, the information on the importer and distributor, of course, the name of the model, the serial number of the light, the refrigerator, the air conditioner, the country where the product was manufactured, the date the product registration was made, and when it was approved by DG R&E, a declaration of conformity to be signed by the importer and the distributor or the legal representative of the company, technical documentation and test report to maps and label, and other information that the manufacturer, the importer, the distributor thinks can be useful to follow the product and to understand how the product is compliant with the registration in São Tomé and Príncipe. The last point I would like to present you is market surveillance, the different mechanism we are proposing. So Senapic will conduct market surveillance of the free appliances with the support of the custom directorate and DGRN, later with ANSI. So it can be through the product registration system and different record and survey of the different association, ANR, APERA, SENAPIC, eventually also custom directorate. The importers of the appliances should also notify each time they have a shipment of appliances that enter the São Tomé and Príncipe island. So in that case, the custom then can check if what is declared in the product registration system is online with what is oncoming inside São Tomé and Príncipe, the weight and the value of the shipments, and also some details of the importer as I used to do. The custom officer, they can also verify the necessary documentation, what is available, and if it's online with the different regulation and on what has been declared on the product registration system. And it has to be done by the official of SENAPIC, supported by DGRN, later ANSI, and the Custom Directorate. So I am pleased to have presented you the different mechanisms, the regulations and the different mechanisms we have put to increase the energy efficiency of the three main appliances that are used by most of the, at least for lighting and refrigerator, less for air conditioner for the different household in São Tomé and Príncipe. So if you have some question and answer, I would be pleased to do my best to answer to your question.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for your thorough explanation.
Thank you very much. I think the issues with the minimum standards for lighting, AC, and AVAC have all been made very clear and how this is going to be implemented and all the bodies involved in this. Before moving on, I'd like to stress that all working documents, I'd like to say that all this presentation and others are available. If you go to the event website, you just need to scroll down and find the minimum performance standards. And you can find everything that Anne talked about. All these presentations, again, will be available on our website. After this webinar, every single presentation will be made available on our website. And after these messages, let's move on to the Q&A. We have 2 questions from our speakers, and I'll try and speak a bit more slowly. Almer Diaz said, considering the problematic status of our grid, how can these equipment help our consumers? How can the use of quality equipment help consumers?
You are mute, Anne.
Yes, I'm sorry. May I ask you to repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. Maybe I can try and do a translation myself. Maybe the translation will be better, but having into consideration that the distribution network is in poor conditions.
Yeah.
And as well as the installation. I don't know what kind of installation the participant is mentioning. How will the use of these higher efficient equipments will support the consumers? I think you have already been answered to this, because it will reduce the power cuts and so on.
Yeah, the main, we estimated the value of the reduction of the peak load and also of the consumption for refrigerator is half of the consumption. What we have also seen is that in the different shops there is already some label and maps, and it's presented, but sometimes it's not the right one, or is not is not adapted to São Tomé and Príncipe, to the climate. For instance, for the refrigerator, it's something like tropical climate. And also, I see in the question that how do we know about the imported appliances? We have some value from the custom directorate of São Tomé and Príncipe, for instance, of the number of air conditioners that are imported in quantity, and also their value and their origin. So it can be also China, of course. It's not only Portugal, but what we get as information, it's mainly China or Portugal. And the Chinese markets are used to produce for foreign market with the label that are requested in the different country. So with this product registration system, normally each time something is entering in the port of São Tomé, in some way you are lucky to be an island in São Tomé, because you have some entry paths which are well defined. Much more, for instance, I'm working also in Benin, and we have like a fluid exchange with Nigeria, which is a neighboring country with no custom between the both. So it can be, it can be more easier like that. And we have some information already available.
Okay, thank you, Anne. The other question is, what is the dimension of the appliances market in São Tomé and Príncipe? For example, number of appliances imported, distributed, number of appliances that are sold, or any other indicator. And another question is, if there are or there will be any government support to getting more efficient appliances.
Okay, so for air conditioner, the last figure we get is for 2021, and we have 1,527 air conditioner that have been imported to São Tomé and Príncipe. For the refrigerator, it was 6,000. For the refrigerator in 2021, it was 6,016 refrigerator, the different types that were imported. And for the lamps, it can be very different according to the year. In 2021, it was around 260,000 lamps, and in 2020, it was more around 760,000 lamps. So we have some information. We have also the number, the average number of household who have equipment like air conditioner. For instance, for air conditioner, it's about around 25%. For refrigerator, it's a higher value. It's around 80%, for instance. So we have some information on what is the market today. And we have also discussion with ANR, Aperas, and so on how we can work with them so we can increase the quality of what they are selling. Also, there is a question of the tariff of the electricity. There can be link, and there can be incentive from the government and the MIS, electricity and water company. When you buy, you can have some rebate on the bill, for instance, when you buy some efficient appliances, because you will participate to the decrease of the peak load of electricity. So for the question to the government, I really prefer that Mr. Gabriel Macango maybe will answer.
Okay, thank you, Anne.
Gabriel, I hope your technical issues have been straightened out. I don't know if you'd like to respond to these questions pertaining to government support for the purchase of more efficient equipment and appliances. Maybe we should wait. No. When it comes to these appliances, we want to have the political tools to create a legal framework that underlines our strategy. Our team at the World Bank has a very specific project already when it comes to lamps, LED lamps, LED bulbs. And together with MI, we have very strong cooperation with all the involved bodies. And we want to have our light bulbs be as efficient as possible, but this cannot just hinge on the government. We're working on a strategy with the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce. And this is all geared towards traditional trade. We're focusing on the shops that sell these products. And we want to have a mechanism that leads to this. We had several meetings with banks to establish how sensitive they are, how receptive they are to this mechanism. All our meetings have been very fruitful. And last year we had a meeting with the Green Fund. This is a short-term project, but it's worth about $1 million, and we can implement a number of measures that will then later support larger products. They were all very pleased that we wanted to push on with this type of measure and to have a synergy with the commercial bank of São Tomé and Príncipe, with a guarantee fund, and involve the private sector. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you very much for your insight. And it's very good to see all these concerted efforts from all partners. And it's good to see the government cooperating with other entities like banks. And it's important this guarantee fund will, I'm sure, will make a difference. I have two further important issues. and said that appliances mostly come from Portugal. And this makes it easier to certify them because they have the EU label. However, in the committee that followed up on this issue and together with the customs technicians, this was brought into question because there's a huge number of appliances coming from countries outside the EU. How will these cases be dealt with?
Yeah, but thank you for this question. Also, the appliances coming from Portugal can be manufactured in China or in other country. So when a product is imported in the European Union and in Portugal, the product must show the label requested by the European Union. So even if it's not a product coming directly from manufactured in Portugal or in Europe coming to São Tomé, if it's product coming from China, directly from China or from Portugal, you can ask to the manufacturer to do the declaration then on the product registration system with a different requirement of the different level of information on the maps and the label and the other technical documentation. You can ask that, and if you know maybe you have some more doubt, Senapic can do the random basis maybe first on these appliances and not on the one coming maybe from Portugal or so on. So it really up to the different stakeholders in São Tomé and Príncipe to check and to have some tests done if they have a doubt on the conformity to the regulation.
Thank you. Now, one final question. I think this is possibly the most relevant question. And it's important that we talk about the elephant in the room. That's why I think this question is so relevant. More efficient equipment is more expensive. Several clients of EMAE pay a monthly fee for electricity. How can we incentivize people to be more efficient if they have no benefit in purchasing more expensive appliances because there's no repercussion in...
Anne, boa sorte a responder a esta pergunta que eu acho que é chave. E depois não sei se o Gabriel quiser acrescentar alguma coisa sobre esta questão, será bem-vindo.
Money is a key point for sure, and the cost is a key point for sure. But you say that more efficient appliances is more expensive. It's just for the investment cost. It's not for the global cost on the global lifetime of the equipment. You should take into account both the investment cost and the operational cost of the appliances. When you buy a lamp, you are just not paying for the bulb you buy, but you are also paying for the electricity you will buy on the lifetime of the lamp. It's the same for the refrigerator and so on. So on a global cost, and we have done some calculation for that based on the local price of electricity and so on, we can see that more efficient appliances on the lifetime of the appliances, you can take 8 years, for instance, for a refrigerator, the global cost is less important, is inferior where you have a more efficient appliances than the bad appliances. And it's the same comparing incandescent lamp and LED lamp. And the different mechanism, it can be linked with electricity cost. You can have mechanism to support the most poorest household to buy efficient appliances, especially for the lighting question. So at the global cost, they will be able to pay, because it will be not to buy a very efficient with a high price one day, but it can be on all the duration of the lifetime of the equipment. You can pay for that.
I agree, of course, Anne. The issue here is that many of the EMAE clients, they don't pay their consumption, they pay a fixed rate, a fee.
Yeah.
So they have higher acquisition costs, but they don't see the fact that they use up less electricity. They don't see that reflected in their bill. For a client on a fixed rate, it doesn't pay to purchase a more efficient appliance. So maybe EMAE needs to change their rates, their tariffs, and avoid fixed rate clients. Well, this we'll maybe talk about this later during the debate stage.
Yeah.
We'll have a representative of EMAE here with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
So much. Thank you so much for all your clarifications. We'll be eagerly waiting for them to be implemented, and we're waiting for their impact in the São Tomé energy mix. Moving on to the next panel. This new panel is dedicated to other partners. We've brought to you the work that we've done with UNIDO, but there are other partners that are now promoting energy efficiency in São Tomé and Príncipe. We're talking about the World Bank, the African Bank for Development, and UNIDO. We'd like to hear from all of them and see what they expect and what they're doing in terms of energy efficiency. I'd like to give the floor to Anders Pedersen. Anderson will start in Portuguese and then move to English. Thank you, Isabel. Good morning, everyone. Like Isabel said, I will make my presentation in English as it's easier for me.
Yes, I just see in the webinar chat that there's a problem with the English translation. That's not very good. While that is being sorted out, I'll bring up my presentation. Let me quickly work this out. Where are we in terms of sharing? Where's the sharing thing now? This is just crazy. Share screen, and it's here.
So, Anders, while you're trying to share your screen, just to inform everyone that we are aware of the issues of the translation and we are taking care of it. So it's being taken care of, and we hope the translation will be okay soon.
That's perfect. Okay, that's good. So can you see? Consegue ver a minha apresentação?
Okay.
Thank you. So I think everybody on this call are probably more or less familiar with the African Development Bank's programs. I thought instead of repeating things that most people have seen more than once, I would follow up on the previous presentation about how can you actually help people investing in energy efficient appliances, etc., etc. It is not something which is currently in our program for São Tomé and Príncipe, but we are in the process of defining another program for the coming years once the existing program has run its course. And one of the ideas that we are looking at is to do something in the energy efficiency space. And we have an instrument that we have tried out, in particular in Tunisia, for solar water heaters that we would like to briefly present to this meeting, maybe also with a view to get some feedback. So what I'm going to talk you through is, and I've been told that I only have 10 minutes, so in the interest of translation, I need to speak fairly slowly. But so I don't have so many slides, and it may take a little bit more in the Q&A session to spell out precisely what unbilled financing entails. Just very quickly, I think a lot of people have gone over this already, so I probably don't need to belabor the point. But energy efficiency is the cheapest form of energy that can be made available in a place like São Tomé and Príncipe, where energy costs, tariffs are very, very high. The attractiveness of energy efficiency is, of course, yeah, I hesitate to use the word enormous, but that's probably the word we should use. Energy efficiency would be enormously helpful, both for the consumer and for MI. Okay, so what we are trying to test out in a number of African countries, we haven't come to São Tomé and Príncipe yet, as I already said, is basically a facility where an installer, let me use the example of the solar water heating example, because we have a practical experience with that. So an approved installer puts a solar water heating puts solar water heating on a private or a public building, and the utility pays for this installation on the day that it's commissioned. Now the utility gets the money from us, they borrow the money from us. Now, why is this attractive for the client and for the utility? Well, it's attractive for the client of the utility because their electricity bill goes down immediately. It is attractive for the utility because it reduces consumption. For instance, in Namibia and Tunisia, where we are working with this instrument, about 40% of electricity consumption in private households come from water heating. So a good quality solar water heating installation can effectively reduce the client bill by 40%. Now, there is a word here, the last bullet, right? Programs require achieving bill neutrality for the participants, i.e. the energy cost savings equal or exceed debt service, resulting in a lower total bill, debt repayment, and electricity after the retrofit. I mean, this is key, and there are some issues in São Tomé and Príncipe that people have already talked about, and it's well understood that, you know, this particular unbilled financing instrument would not work in a situation if people are actually not metered. But we have high hopes that MI and São Tomé and Príncipe will move rapidly after the recent conference led by the minister. I think the doadores have imparted on the minister the need for accelerating the rollout of prepaid meters and smart meters. Here's a little bit of how it works again. You have very high current energy consumption. After you get the financing of the new equipment, your energy consumption goes down. After the financing period, the gray box disappears and the consumer is left with the situation on the right-hand side. The right column indicates the situation after the equipment has been paid off. So nothing is for free, and nothing is as easy as it sounds when you present 3, 4, 5 slides. Let's look at some of the challenges. There are a number of challenges with billing systems and utilities taking this role as a financier. there may be upfront investments needed by a utility to restructure billing structures and other systems. And the last bullet on the challenge side is it is the duty of the financial institution and the utility to make sure that the investments that are being financed under this instrument result in a net saving for the consumer engaging in this exercise. If it doesn't, then very few people will take on this unbilled financing and the whole thing will fall apart. So I stress again that this is not necessarily easy to do, but the African Development Bank stand ready with TA and financing potentially also for São Tomé and Príncipe to explore this instrument that we have extremely high hopes can be rolled out in many African countries. We have actually designed a lot of our thinking around a huge success that has taken place in Tunisia. We have financed some of these activities, but to be very frank with you, STEG, which is a very good utility, it's worthwhile for MI to make a visit to STEG in Tunisia. It's a very well managed and a very good utility. They actually came up with this on their own, and our role has been relatively minor, but we work with them and we've been able to take some of the lessons from the Tunisian experience. And that's actually brings my presentation to an end because, I promised to keep it very short, around 10 minutes. What I would like to just stress is that while this could be very interesting for São Tomé and that we are very willing to work on this, there are some prerequisites, right? It only works in a situation where there is a metered system. So basically all consumers, this kind of instrument can only come when the majority of consumers are on prepayment meters or smart meters. Secondly, there needs to be credible installers, and it doesn't need to be solar water heating. It can also be things like heat pump based water heaters. And another thing, we are not talking about this today, but the same instrument, unbilled financing, we are looking at that as an instrument in South Africa to finance small solar rooftop, solar PV systems. So it's not restricted. Unbilled financing is not restricted to energy efficiency, but it's probably particularly suited for energy efficiency. So let me stop there, and I do have until 1 o'clock. So if there's a ton of questions, I'd be very happy to take them all.
Thank you, Anders. I hope there will be many questions for you. And for those who would like to ask anything to Anders, please post it in the chat.
So let's keep going, and thank you, Anders, for that perspective on the African Union Bank. It did already have a project in São Tomé and Príncipe. It would naturally like to come up with a new one dedicated to energy efficiency. And I think we keep coming back to the main question here and the key takeaway. Although I don't want to preclude and preempt what we're going to talk about, but I think one of the key takeaways is going to be the changing of tariff and MI in order to make sure that all consumers have a meter and that they are really paying what they're using in terms of energy, so that they can also be incentivized to consume less. Now I'd like to give the word to Leonardo Salma from World Bank so that he can tell us what has the World Bank been doing in terms of energy efficiency in São Tomé and Príncipe. Thank you, Isabel. Good morning, everybody. I'm an expert in energy efficiency for the World Bank. I'm going to just give you a brief overview of what have we been doing in São Tomé and Príncipe. Just a quick reminder for you to switch on your camera, please. Yes, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much once again for the Director General and for Alair for the invitation and to address to the World Bank so that we can showcase what we've been doing. Just a brief explanation about the World Bank group. I think most of you are aware already, but our group is composed of different institutions, public and private sector. So we have the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. We have the IDA, International Development Association. And this is on the financing branch for governments. Private sector, we do have IFC, a cooperation agency for private sector. We also have the MIGA. And we've we're a little bit above $500 billion, 12,000 projects and more than almost 200 partnering countries. We can't talk about energy efficiency without addressing problems that São Tomé and Príncipe has to deal with when it comes to energy efficiency. So São Tomé has a high cost of energy production. We have a very dependent on diesel, and so tariffs do not mirror fair prices. We have losses of over 33% associated to inefficiencies in the transmission and distribution system. We also have frauds and thefts, and so low energy efficiency. The service access rate to electricity is around 84% of the population, one of the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa. We do have regular power cuts. Obviously, the oil price has been ebbing and flowing a lot, so that has as well to play there as well. Firewood 45.6, that's what the households have been using. Charcoal, oil, and other commodities as well. We need some measures. We need to implement and to change the current electricity matrix. We could have 50% of energy coming from renewables, and at least 30% could be solar. And we have results that are in, and we need to seriously consider water capability, hydropower capabilities. Obviously, São Tomé doesn't have a lot of potential for other resources, but we do have in this one, and we have to boost this one. We have to replace diesel without adding new thermal power plants. And I think we have to look towards renewable plants, solars and hydropower plants. Energy tariff. it's not cheap. It's 23 cents of a dollar to kWh or kilowatt per hour. Still is below the actual and the current diesel price. I think regulation wise, I think my colleagues from Anita have just mentioned we have a long way to go. We have to attract capital, private capital. We need to approve those regulations. We have to boost our own production and access renewables as well. The liquid gas, liquid GPL, could also be exploited, and it could be an alternative and a clean energy source for kitchens, for instance. We did have previous studies in São Tomé, and we estimate around somewhere between 148 and 261 million US dollars for investment, public-private as well. Now, if we add the costs and to be financed, the government alone won't be able to cover the costs. So the private sector will have to play a key role here to develop the energy matrix here in São Tomé. So up until 2026, the average cost of energy generation could be 30% below what of its current price, and that's good news. Now, what are we be doing? What have we been doing in the electric sector? We have two projects: recovering the electricity sector, so increasing the production of renewable energy, and to improve the reliability in electricity supply. So generation, distribution, and clients. I will focus a little bit more on the client part. We have people have mentioned here some issues directed towards the client, and I think prepaid meters, 21,000, give or take. That's a program, and a two-prong and two-phase program that's in the works. And I think we can, with that, replace products for higher efficiency products and replace that fixed tariff as well. And I think the meters there can improve and can play a key role here. World Bank has been financing another program that replaces incandescent lamps for LEDs. This LED program aims to reduce in peak hour between 8 and 12 megawatts. So we could we can actually decrease the daily diesel consumption up to 18%. So we would like to distribute these lamps, these LEDs to the current MI customers. This will be done by the electricity producing companies, and we'll be using the incandescent, the current light bulbs. We've also been financing entrepreneurship and capacity building in that area. Entrepreneurship for women, for instance, a transition energy program, for instance, and so in order to keep those gains from the LED program, we need to pass some regulation and to discard gradually and ban from the market these incandescent lamps. and so give other types of incentives for importers to import the LEDs. We also have another project in the works, in the pipeline, that has to do with increasing access to electricity through solar energy. So we have to prepare the infrastructure and improve one of the biggest constraints in energy production in São Tomé, and that has to do with solar system, to connect it to the main grid, to the network, to the net. And then we have to rehabilitate and strengthen the distribution network. And we also have to electrify public premises with solar system capabilities. But like I mentioned, because we're so dependent on diesel, it's very hard to achieve that energy efficiency. Just to wrap things up, these are the light bulbs, the lamps you can see, in the labeling of these light bulbs and lamps. I think energy efficiency can be achieved if a whole array of activities, from control and inspection, are in place, so that we can really make sure that everything is up to scratch, up to task, and that we can apply the regulation properly. Thank you. Thank you, Leonardo. Thank you for all the details, for that explanation, and for giving us a proper framework of the energy challenges that São Tomé and Príncipe is facing now, but also the opportunities and the much needed investment. I think it's very good for us to see the work that the World Bank has been developing so far when it comes to replacing these incandescent lamps. And I think we will be keeping our eyes peeled when it comes to implementing this project in the solar system. And last but not least, I think I'd like to give the floor to Miriam Amendizabal from PNUR, another really very active partner in this energy area. All these programs with different partners, they all have a given time frame, but one ends and another one begins. That's just the way it goes. So, Maite, it will be a pleasure to hear what we can expect, what you can count on from PNUR. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure for us to be here. Just like Isabel said, all the partners. Well, last week we had a concerning meeting, and we just ended the project, but we're now preparing a new project, which is the Africa Mini Grids program. It's a regional flagship project. It will be implemented soon, trying to find solutions and trying to develop financial viable models in the solar energy area, especially in the private sector. It's really aimed towards creating new models, new solutions for the mini grids. But we also like to make the most of this opportunity to create mini grids that are more geared the private sector. As you know, it's been struggling a lot with all these energy power cuts. I'm not going to give you a presentation like the previous speakers have done. I won't do it because PNUD really, we haven't been very active in São Tomé and Príncipe when it comes to energy efficiency. But what I would like to talk to you about is to put out there 2 or 3 questions that I think are very useful, could be useful for for a further debate. I would also like to tell you what will PNUD be doing in our next cycle. So in 2023 will be the start of our new programming cycle. And one of the outcomes would be really focused on the energy area and the renewables and low carbon solutions, and to really mitigate the impact of the climate change. So we'll be working in 3 areas: public policies, like we always do, in trying to make sure that climate change impact and we can manage natural and social risks, and that these measures are implemented, are part and parcel of public policies. We'll continue to managing and protecting natural resources, because nature, beaches, forests, these are the best asset of this country, and they have to be capitalized to attract external and foreign investment as well, but also to increase sustainability and productivity, to achieve more dignity in a way for everybody. And we also keep working on the renewables and energy efficiency investment to improve the access, enlarge the energy matrix, and to really connect the poor families and clean energy to the private sector. So the questions I would like to put out there really have to be seen in the light of the context, of the specific context. And last week we talked, and I think it was a really great moment where everybody was really honest and earnest, and could really ask the questions they wanted to. I think it was really a transparent exercise. And from that, we have to see that it's urgent, it's pertinent, and it's timely, and it's very much needed to talk about this energy efficiency. I would like to wholeheartedly thank you to everybody for this reflection process that that has just begun. It's not going to happen overnight, but being able to kick it off and to start having a dialogue with all stakeholders, I think it's part and parcel of the said process. First and foremost, I think we have to compensate MI for its losses when it comes to inappropriate energy use from the public in general, from public clients, because otherwise it's to no avail what we're talking here. And in a nutshell, we'll be contributing to a process that's doomed to fail. So that's the first decision we have to take. It's a political decision. So those who don't pay need to start paying, and they need to pay what they use, what they consume. This is a highly debated topic last week, really, because if you don't understand how the sector works, you can come up with a lot of solutions, different solutions that may be really adequate and viable in other contexts, but here they don't make any sense, because if people don't pay for energy, then that type of measure is really of no interest at all. Second question I'd like to put out there, it's something very hard. It's changing your mindset, which was one of the hardest things to do. So evidently, if the decision makers have to be aware of this, how important energy efficiency is in trying to mitigate this energy problem that the country is facing now. So the decision maker needs to take stock of this and legislate and apply the law. the users, Leonardo and others mentioned this as well, and I just want to reiterate this here. So it's important to legislate and to execute the law. So once the decision has been made by the government, I think legislating is important, and then executing the law is very important as well, which takes its time, obviously, and give everybody the necessary means to do it. Now, user-wise, and for those who know the São Tomé context here, it's of the utmost importance, that everybody starts to understand what are the benefits of saving energy, which is something that's not present at all in the São Tomé and Príncipe culture, and well, we need to do that. Maybe what happened in Europe from December 2021 to September 2022, for instance, I think that's an example of the huge price surges in electricity costs, and people finally started to take measures, day-to-day measures, like temperature regulating the temperature in their ACs a bit more vigilantly, and also keep switching on and off the lights when they're in the house. Another reflection I would like to leave you with here, I'm not sure if anybody mentioned this, but it's something that we can just look away from. Secondhand appliance market. And it comes from a different countries, or it's still the African continent. So appliances are almost at the end of their life cycle, but they're very, very cheap. So those people who export that, it's a problem, right? It's an environmental problem. And then they're sort of handing off that problem to us. And people with low income, it's the only thing they can afford, even if it only lasts for 1 or 2 years, and it's highly inefficient, those appliances at the end of their life cycle again. But people buy these type of appliances, don't even probably pay for what they consume. They pay for a fixed tariff, like people were saying, mentioned that a while ago. Well, I'll end here. Thank you very much for your invitation. It's a process in the making, all of this. And thank you very much. And Isabel, thank you. And we're here. Thank you, Maite, for those very relevant questions. And without a doubt, PNUD program has been very, very relevant. And we are looking forward to seeing that the next project, and what kind of environmental impacts they will have in São Tomé. And thank you also for mentioning the debates and the conversations you had with the government, the ministries. And I think there's always obviously a lot of things to improve, but São Tomé has always been an example of different partners and programs. Sometimes you see that happening in other countries, that each program works in its own silo, and then so they kind of lose out on the impact they can have. But donors already had that in mind, and were told about that when they started working there, and now the ministry told us that they will improve further on that, which is a very good thing. So now we just heard the way the donors or the cooperation partners see things, and we can just attest it to how committed they are, and I think we've gained a broader understanding of all the issues here. So I think this is obviously an added value, because we're talking about people that really know the São Tomé and Príncipe reality, that we are running a little bit late in terms of our Q&A session. Anders, unfortunately, is no longer with us. Some questions that have been addressed to him already been replied to in the chat. If you want to elaborate on a specific topic, send us an email, and then we'll ask Anders to swap emails with you, and you can talk directly to him if he agrees to. There was a question to Leonardo, a relatively simple one. Leonardo, I think in your presentation, you mentioned only São Tomé. Does your program applies to Príncipe as well? The program is to be applied in São Tomé and Príncipe. Thank you, Leonardo. Thank you for clarifying that for us. So if there are no further questions for these three speakers, and because we're going to have a debate where you can ask questions after this debate, we thought about having this open debate about how to apply energy efficiency norms. But what we'd like to do here with this debate is just to bring in different players from the sector. So we have here Salvi Ramos, head of the electricity department in Niger, so the regulating authority. Then we have two representatives from the energy directorate as well, and an expert as well for more practical things. We will have Antonio Ramos from the transportation sector in São Tomé and Príncipe. We talked about energy efficiency. It's a cross-cutting topic, obviously, and also we'll talk about the transportation as well. We have the general director for MI as well, which has been mentioned quite a lot here. So we'd like to see what MI has in the pipeline to really promote everything. And obviously somebody in charge for with a perspective on the international cooperation. We had 45 minutes for this debate. Now we just have 30 minutes. I would like to ask every speaker just to give us a brief introduction on the topic for 3 minutes, and then people will be able to ask their questions on our chat. Please let us know who you are addressing your question to, and then we can have this back and forth, because I think it would be a very interesting thing. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Selby Ramos. I'd just like to make sure that he is here online as a speaker as well. So please switch on your mic and your camera. Thank you very much.
Selby, you are muted. Good morning, everyone. We can see you and hear you. 3 minutes. From the regulation standpoint, we try to see things from a broader standpoint. We're talking about energy efficiency. We want the regulator to be effective across the board. The commercial side must be efficient, because if we're not commercially efficient, then the clients will take the brunt of our inefficiency. That's why the regulator also wants to protect the consumer's interests. There are other new players in the private sector that can help solve or fight this energy crisis. We need to make this sector more dynamic, but to that end, we need to strengthen the private sector. I'm going to pick up on a lot that has been said already. First, we need to identify the issues and then come up with the solutions. Energy efficiency of appliances we've talked about issues with Portugal. There are other issues with second-hand equipment from appliances from Africa, and they're expensive, and there's no warranty in our shops. And very often, the issue is not, the problem is not with the appliances, it has to do, the problems start with the grid. So we have to have the groundwork for people to think that they are safe when investing a lot of money in new appliances, that their money will be safe in case they break down. The World Bank says they will provide EMEA clients with light bulbs. 30% of consumers are not EMEA clients. What about the other 30% that are not their clients? What do? We need to revise this. From the regulation standpoint, Ajar and Maite knows us. We need to have proper legislation, but we also need to have effective legislation. Legislation must be applied, must be useful. We must raise political awareness so that we have laws that are actually effectively applied. Because sometimes we have beautiful laws, but if they're not applied, they're useless. I hope I didn't go beyond the time that I had, but there's so much to say. Maybe I'll get back to this later on in the debate. I think everything you said is very relevant. When we hear the regulator say that it's crucial to apply the legislation, we realize that this is in fact a key issue. In order to give you a more strategic standpoint from the sector of natural resources, I call to the floor Blizzard Neto. Blizzard, hi, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Isabel. Thank you very much. I see that many of the people who came before me have laid out the major challenges for the implementation of energy efficiency measures. Unfortunately, you have a lot of echo. EMA is a focal point, and it's very strategically close to other institutions. When we talk about energy efficiency, we are talking about including a number of players, amongst which are consumers. They're the end client. There's issues with the market, with the quality of energy, etc. I think that our challenges, Maite showed us many important things, and we focus on the political aspect. We need to create proximity. We need to raise awareness with people. I don't want to go into other people's time, so I'll stop now and maybe get back to this later. Thank you, Blizardo. You're not actually answering any questions. You're leaving us with more questions. But this is also important. First, we need to identify what issues we have so that we can then later solve them. Now, with a more pragmatic approach from the same DG, I'd give the floor to Diodocha Lima. Please be careful to mute yourselves because you're sitting in the same room. Thank you, Isabel. Picking up where Belizardo left off, our task is to implement the energy policies. We've been working hard to make up for some gaps. There are many rules that apply to the grid, for instance. We know that in São Tomé, most appliances don't have a label, for instance, and we want legislation pertaining to the quality of the appliances that come into the country. There's also a technical regulation for low voltage grids and networks. There are many people in the country that lack qualification. In many electrical installers, we need professionally qualified technicians. Might have mentioned that some people are in default, they don't pay some clients, but energy efficiency needs the involvement of people. When it comes to the decision makers, we have, it's true, many rules and regulations, but unless we have political engagement, then the problem will not be solved. Some people argue that because they don't pay, they don't need efficient equipment or appliances. But the government is trying hard to have people who don't pay to actually pay, because they're depleting or using up other people's resources. I think most things have already been dealt with. One of our colleagues from Príncipe, he stressed that we can purchase more efficient appliances, but there's a deeper problem that has to do with the grid. I can buy 1,000 efficient appliances, but if there's a problem connecting the grid to my home, then the issue persists. Step by step, we'll try and do away with this dilemma. To that end, we need everyone to be engaged, everyone along this chain. We have a technical department where we have all the energy stakeholders, and we keep working there to have a refined product, in this case, a refined plan. Thank you very much. Again, let me state how important it is to strengthen this commitment by DGRNE. We rest assured that DGRNE has identified key issues and they're working to solve them. Energy efficiency is energy, in fact, but like Anne said, the goal of energy is to meet some needs. And the sector of public transit also needs, and transport in general also needs, a lot of energy. I'd like to give the floor to Antonio Ramos. I'd like to talk about efficiency in the transport sector. There's a lot still to be done. Over 60% of the vehicles here are 20-year-olds old or more. Several governments have taken several steps. They've attributed credits to taxi drivers. They're planning the use of electric vehicles. We're trying to get specialized dealerships and repair shops that specialize in electric vehicles. We want to implement a system of regular inspection of automobiles. But this can make people's lives much harder. We need to look into this. We know that much of our vehicles end up in the north part of the country because that's where they pick up several goods. And these trucks help deteriorate and damage the roads. We're thinking of having these loads be transported through cabotage or maybe by boat. As for public transit, unfortunately, we have not been able to implement the use of motorcycles. This has grown, but the only public transit we have are school buses, and there's far more motorcycles now than before. We also have an oil treatment plant. Mechanics tend to protect burnt oil, but we need to find a way to treat this. Please, can you come to an end? A lot of the things that we want to do depend on financing. When it's up to the private partners to invest, they're all very hesitant because the conditions are not ideal. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry if I went on a bit longer than I should have. No, please, by all means. I was just asking you to wrap up to create more momentum here. We'll come to the questions later. Thank you for stressing some of the issues faced by the transport sector. I'd like to thank MI for being here. We heard from the Director of Energy, and he's now been replaced by Afonsina Rodrigues, Commercial Director. We can't see you or hear you. I hear you, but it's very low. There's some issues with the sound. They're trying to sort them out. There's the issues with the subsidies, incentives, grid stability, that the instability hurts the appliances. Are UPSs used in São Tomé? There's a further issue. For the Didache, they talk about the non-qualified, non-certified technicians. With this new regulation, something will change. Is there a program for qualifying non-certified technicians? Because if not, then they'll work in a covered way. How can we face up to the grid variations and how this may affect the appliances? Well, this is an issue. We have partnerships with training centers, with all training centers in the country. I've done research in the northern part of the country, and most fires are due to faulty installations done by people who are not qualified. But these technicians must be trained. We can't go back because the ones left in the lurch are the end users, the consumers. Regarding UPSs, we're not used to that because they're expensive and only more forward-looking people use UPSs. UPSs tend to stabilize the voltage, but mostly public buildings use UPSs, not so much private bodies. Thank you so much for all these clarifications and for the good news you brought us regarding the training program. This is a question I'd like to put to all of you in the room of DGRNE. The question is, how can the public sector become one of the main promoters of this market? Because the public sector consumes energy. How can the public sector lead by example? Will there be equipment replaced? Will they install solar panels? How does the state as a consumer apply energy efficiency measures? I'll try and put in my 10 cents. The public sector is one of the main sectors for the success of energy efficiency in order to cut down on consumption. Within the scope of this energy project, we ran 2 tests. One of them 2 years ago, and we apply a self-production system. In this project, we eliminated air conditioning to decrease consumption and replaced lamps in buildings. And we tried to use sunlight. If we do all of this, we can play a key role in increasing energy efficiency as we've heard, especially, and I'm thinking about a particular meeting with our partners, the public sector in São Tomé does not pay for its power. And if we're the first to apply energy efficiency, if we turn off the lights, if we use AC only when there's people inside the room, and if we use self-generating systems like PV panels, I believe that these measures would greatly contribute to increasing energy efficiency. And that's why I said that I believe that the public sector can play a key role in this way. Thank you very much. Many of our speakers are
Thank you.
there.
Thank you very
The same-
much. That is a great example. And I think that's one of the only buildings that is provided with energy, really. Good morning. Good morning, Alfonsina. Yes, now we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much. We can't see you, but at least we can see you. Unfortunately, I don't have a camera, so I hope you can still hear me loud and clear. Thank you for the opportunity. Just like to pick up on what Selby said about the fixed tariff. He said that a vast majority of clients for IMI pay a fixed tariff, but existing clients that don't have a meter because it's been taken out because it was broken, this fixed tariff is applied in function of the real consumption, of the client's real consumption. And new clients that are then connected to the grid, those pay a fixed tariff on the basis of their declared appliances when the inspection takes place. So this was broadly debated in our last week's meeting, in the last week meeting we had, and commercial losses and non-technical losses as well. This fixed tariff, this fixed rate will be overcome this issue with the meters that are being installed by the World Bank. So I think it's once we have those meters, the clients will no longer be paying a tariff rate, a fixed rate rather. We need to restructure our grids, our networks, and that will help a lot in bringing down those losses. And people talked about the loss compensation that I think will address that. Consumers connected to our grid, to our network, will benefit a lot from this, and we will save energy as well. Mostly from our core grid in Kabanu. Another point I would like to address here, Anderson mentioned during his presentation the invoicing system that will be safeguarded as well by the World Bank project. So getting meters and requalifying the network, I think we will solve a great deal of issues, loss-related issues that we have. We do have high values here, 35%. I think Bernardo mentioned this data available, 2021 data. I think now we are up there in 35% in terms of losses. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'm not sure if there's any more questions addressed to MI, but I think that's pretty much all from our end. Thank you very much. Obviously, we would have more questions addressed to you whenever we have the utility sector here here with us. We are past our time, but even if we were to stay an extra hour here with you, I think it would be very hard to answer all the questions. But I think the key points have been addressed already. So really, we saw that in last week's meeting, and I think we're on the right track here. So the tariff issues there, you just explained that with the support of the World Bank, we'll be able to overcome that, to guarantee the participation of all stakeholders, executing the law, executing the legislation, and regulations have been prepared. They are being prepared, new regulations as well. And when it comes to energy and grid losses, UNIDO, I think, has just finished a call for tenders here. So we'll have new legislation here, engaging the private sector here as well. It's very important. And really getting other players on board, new institutions, Senapeak as well. A lot of people have to work together here. The importance of financial incentives here, guarantee, fund the credit line. You've mentioned that, and that will be really very relevant. So awareness raising and communication, because this all has to do, energy saving has to do with behaviors. It's very behavioral. So I think I just wanted to highlight a couple of key points that have been addressed here. As you said, as I said previously, there are other issues that will remain unanswered, but I think at least we have identified the issues, and the fact that the relevant institutions are working on this, I think this is a big plus. And we'll be here watching and keeping our eyes peeled for the results. I don't want to really overstep my role here as moderator, so I'd give the floor to Gabriel so he can bring this webinar to an end. Gabriel, yes, thank you very much. Thank you once again. We're here on the final stretch of our webinar. All the players, all the parts, stakeholders have to participate. I think this shows that there's a general will in São Tomé and all its partners to cooperate, so that we can together change this paradigm when it comes to energy efficiency. I think it's been made very clear from all the debate and the interventions here and the presentations made as well from consultants. I think that the commitment is very clear now. It's a shared commitment from all of us. It's what we want. It's what we are trying to do. I think it means that we're on the right track. Technologies to meet these challenges are already here. Some of them will come in the future. At least the first couple of challenges, we already have the technology available to overcome them. We need to optimize things. We need to implement our measures. Need to get organized, clear clarity on the legal issues. I think we'll be making inroads. I think that was clear from last week's meeting, for instance, where we talked with our, in a way, direct partners. We also need to have a renewable energy platform that can provide further assistance in trying to keep the whole sector organized and respect each one's role, so that we can execute, all of us, our strategies in trying to achieve our end result. Like I said, I'd like to thank everybody, PNUD, UNIDO, World Bank, Alair as well, the West, the African Bank, Development Bank as well. I would like to thank all the guests and different stakeholders from public and private sector, the national, the domestic and international participants as well, people from other areas as well. I think this is just the beginning. You could just knock at our doors and we'll be all ears if you have any other suggestions. And obviously we're working in partnership with different international entities. Then Alair, obviously, it's part and parcel of this project. It's always with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you all. Transport director as well. Thank you very much. Transport sector. When we talked about like e-mobility, they were there as well. It's a common effort, common struggle from the regulation side and from the utility side. Everyone has to keep and has to play its role. I'd like to also thank him on behalf of the minister. He wanted to very much to be here with us, but unfortunately we couldn't have him here today. But we did have an opening speech from our right honorable and distinguished guest. So I would like to close this debate and thank you very much once again, all the participants, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. This will bring to an end our webinar. Everybody will get satisfaction survey on by email. We'd like very much for you to answer that if you can. And on our event webpage, we'll have all the information here. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon.